Hello everyone, this is a short screencast on the blood and the blood vessels, and this is revision from B1. So the objective is to revise the composition of the blood and how the blood vessels are adapted to function efficiently. So we are going to start by looking at the actual contents of the blood. So the blood is split into 4 parts. So we've got red blood cells that you'll see in the red band at the bottom of that diagram. We've got white blood cells and platelets that are in the middle there, and then you've got plasma that is in that more orangey band at the top. Now we're going to start by talking about the red blood cells, which are at the bottom of that diagram there. Now, what the diagram represents, if you spin blood really quickly, it's called centrifugation, the blood will split into different sections. You'll get the red blood cells at the bottom, you'll get the white blood cells and the platelets in the middle, and then you will get the plasma at the top. So that is what that diagram shows. So we're first of all going to talk about the red blood cells. Now you have to know what each part does. So the red blood cells carry oxygen. Okay, they contain a protein called hemoglobin, and when oxygen enters the blood, the oxygen joins with the hemoglobin and it makes oxyhemoglobin, and the oxygen is then delivered to the respiring cells. So any cells that are doing respiration, oxygen needs to be delivered there. Okay, so please just remember that red blood cells contain hemoglobin and they carry oxygen. Moving on to the white blood cells help the body to fight disease. So if there is a question about fighting disease, you need to refer to the white blood cells. The platelets help your blood to clot. So if you cut yourself, your blood needs to clot so that you don't bleed out, so that you don't carry on bleeding. So the platelets help your blood to clot. And the plasma at the top, which is the one people always find the trickiest, pretty much carries everything else. So water, carbon dioxide, hormones, amino acids, enzymes, everything else is carried by the plasma. So if you can think about the red blood cells carrying oxygen, the white blood cells fighting disease, the platelets helping the blood to clot, and the plasma is more of a carrier tool, so it carries things around the body. Now, something else I'd like to point out about the red blood cells, they have no nucleus. So we always talk about animal cells having a nucleus. Red blood cells do not. And they don't have a nucleus because it gives more room for hemoglobin, which means there is more room for oxygen to be carried. So if you are asked which cell doesn't have a nucleus, you need to talk about it being a red blood cell, and it means that there's more room for oxygen, so that more oxygen can be delivered around the body. Okay, I've also put on there that the average human has 5.5 litres of blood. So the average adult human, obviously children will have less. So if there's any of that you've missed, please go back a little bit and listen, but make sure you've written some notes and learn what each part of the blood does. Okay, moving on. You may be given examples of diseases of the blood, and some of them are listed there. So haemophilia, anemia, and severe combined immunodeficiency. So what you would have to do is read about the disease and link them to the part of the blood. So the first one, haemophilia. If patients cut themselves, they can bleed very easily, and their cuts fail to scab and heal up, can lead to patients bleeding to death. Okay, now that is linked to platelets. That is linked to them not having enough platelets, or the platelets not working properly, and because their blood isn't clotting. So the first one, haemophilia, is linked to platelets. The second one, anemia, often lack energy, are very tired, can have a very pale appearance. That one is linked to the red blood cells, because if they don't have a high enough red blood cell count, they're not carrying enough oxygen, which means that they can't respire at a high enough rate, which means that they are not going to release as much energy, which will make them tired. Okay, and the last one, severe combined immunodeficiency. If patients catch a cold, they could die. Now that is linked to the white blood cells, because the white blood cells help you to fight disease on a daily basis. Okay, again, if you've missed any of that, go back and listen, but these are all diseases of the blood. Okay, right, if you just have a go at these true or false questions, pause the screencast, have a go, and then we will go through the answers in a minute. Okay, hopefully you've had a go at those. So part A, red blood cells do not have a nucleus, leaving plenty of room for oxygen. That is true. Part B, plasma carries substances around the body such as hormones and carbon dioxide. That is also true. At respiring cells, oxygen will leave the red blood cells. That is true. And remember that carbon dioxide will then go back into the blood, but it is not carried by the red blood cells. Carbon dioxide is found in the plasma. Part D, plasma is made up of small cells that help blood to clot. That is false. That would be the platelets. And E, white blood cells help the body to fight disease. That is true. Okay, make sure you've assessed those, put a little tick or cross at the side and corrected where you have gone wrong. Okay, moving on then. So we're now going to think about how blood is transported around the body. So we've talked about and we've revised what is in the blood. We're now going to talk about how it is transported around the body. So it will be pumped from the heart through different vessels that you do need to know about. So here is a very simplified diagram of what our bodies are like. You can see in the middle here is the heart. Now from the heart, blood will be pumped away and it will go to the liver, to the gut, to other parts of the body. And at these parts of the body, oxygen will be released from the red blood cells so that the respiring cells can do respiration. They need that oxygen, they need that glucose so that they can respire. And then carbon dioxide will go back into the blood. So the red represents the oxygenated blood and the blue represents the deoxygenated blood. So we've got, you can see where the arrows, you can see which direction the blood will go. It will drop oxygen off and it will pick carbon dioxide back up, which will then be taken to the lungs so that we can breathe it out. So we're now going to look more specifically at the 3 really important blood vessels that you need to know about. So the first ones are the arteries. You have to know the structure of these vessels. So I always think about arteries carrying blood away from the heart. So arteries away, that's why I've underlined the A and the A. So if you think of arteries away, and the arteries carry oxygenated blood. Now structurally, you need to know that the wall of the arteries are thick, so it's a thick wall. And the reason for this is because it carries blood at high pressure. And if the wall wasn't thick, then these vessels would burst. Now, because it's got a thick muscular wall, it will also mean that it has got a smaller lumen. So the lumen is just the central part of the vessel where blood flows through. So small lumen, thicker wall. Okay, moving on then. If arteries carry blood away from the heart, veins carry blood back towards the heart. Okay, now this time the wall is thinner because the blood isn't at high pressure, which means that the lumen is larger. So make sure that you are able to compare arteries and veins, as that may come up in an exam, the comparison, but make sure you put both pieces of information in. So don't just put arteries have a small lumen. If it's a comparison question, make sure you put arteries have a small lumen, veins have a larger lumen. Arteries have a thicker wall, veins have a thinner wall. And if it asks you for reasons why, you can obviously then put in about the higher pressure blood that is being carried through the arteries. The other thing about veins is that they have valves. So I always think of veins and valves. So veins have valves to stop the backflow of blood. So that is what a valve is. It stops the backflow of blood. And because the blood is travelling at lower pressure, it may end up going back the wrong way. So that valve, stop that from happening. Okay, so key points about veins: they carry low pressure blood back towards the heart. The blood is deoxygenated. They have large lumen, thin wall, and they contain valves which stop the backflow of blood. So remember veins and valves. The heart also has valves as well, and the valves in the heart do the exact same thing, which is to stop the blood from going in the right direction, to stop the backflow of blood. Okay, the third vessel and the last vessel we're going to talk about today are capillaries. Now, there are millions of capillaries within our body, and they are used to connect arteries and veins. So between the arteries and the veins, we've got this huge network of capillaries, which are absolutely tiny little blood vessels. Now, they are only 1 cell thick. So if you look at this diagram here, this represents one cell, this represents one cell. And as you can see from the wall of the capillary, they are one cell thick. Now that's a really important adaptation because it means that when the blood is moving slowly through the lumen, so slowly through the middle, oxygen can actually be passed through this one cell into the respiring cells, and then carbon dioxide can quickly come back in. So it means gas exchange can happen as efficiently as possible, because if you think about the work that we've done on diffusion quickly if the gases don't have to move very far. And if they've only got to move through one cell, then they are going to move as efficiently as possible. Other substances will be exchanged as well, but the main exchange is the gas exchange, so the oxygen moving out of the capillaries and the carbon dioxide moving back in. Okay, so that's a short revision screencast on blood and blood vessels. Thank you for listening. Good luck with your revision. Take care.